Before we get into this podcast, we are doing our first ever giveaway, and I want you guys to get in on it. We have partnered up with Brush Creek Monster Scents, and we are giving away their Dough on Fire Estrus, a Brush Creek Monster Scrapevine, some Brush Creek Monster swag, and some Mobile Hunter podcast swag. In order to get in on the giveaway, leave us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts and go to the Brush Creek Monsters Facebook page and give it a like. This giveaway is only going to run from October 25th until November 1st. On November 1st, we are announcing the winner. We will randomly draw one of the individuals that leaves us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts between October 25th and the morning of November 1st. So be sure to get in on the giveaway, don't miss out, and enjoy the rest of your episode. What's up, everybody? Josh here. Just wanted to take a quick second to tell you about one of our favorite companies to utilize during that pre-rut and rut time frame, and that is Brush Creek Monsters, LLC. Brush Creek Monsters is a family-owned and operated business. They are a no BS company, and one of our favorite things about them is they try and keep all of their scent products as natural as they can be. They have natural scrape vines that they will hang with their deer herd to let the bucks and does utilize them, and then they will ship them out to you quickly. They have a very precise process for collecting their doe estrus. There are no additives, and quite frankly, that's some of the fastest turnaround time I've ever had on doe estrus. I've received doe estrus that was collected the day before, so if that isn't fresh, I don't know what fresh is. Now, like I said, they're a family-owned and operated business, and they come in high demand. So if you are wanting any other products, I recommend getting with them sooner rather than later. Check them out at brushcreekmonstersllc.com. That is brushcreekmonstersllc.com. Peep rotation. There's nothing more frustrating than pulling your bow back on a nice buck only to not be able to see your pins clearly because your peep is rotated. This is something that I've personally experienced in the field, and I know Chris and Rick both have as well. In order to reduce this risk, we only pick high-quality bowstrings to put on our bows. That is why this season we have partnered up with Hooked Up Bowstrings. If you are looking for a high-quality string to help get you through the season, look no further than Hooked Up. Matt, the owner, is a fantastic guy. He is an accomplished competition archer and an accomplished hunter in the woods. You can visit his website at hookedupbowstrings.com. Use the code MOBILEHUNTER10. That's MOBILEHUNTER, the number 10, in order to get 10% off your order.
Hey guys, Rick here from the Mobile Hunter Podcast, and I'm here to tell you about one of our sponsors, Sadie's LLC, Custom Ammunition and Gun Works. Aaron Satterfield and his family have been turning out some awesome game loads that have been putting down deer, waterfowl, and turkey all year long. The Sadie's Fatty, the turkey load that we use, can stop a bird dead in its tracks. Check them out at saddiesllc.com. That's SATTIES LLC.com, or on Facebook at Saddies LLC, and tell them the Mobile Hunter Podcast sent you.
Welcome to the Mobile Hunter Podcast. Our mission is simple. We want to help you become a better hunter. We believe that mobility kills and efficiency will set you free.
How's it going, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another Wild Calling Wednesday. Today I have got on none other than the founder of ASIO Gear, an absolute badass internationally. He's hunted more than 15 different countries, and we were trying to determine how many big game species he's killed, and we determined that it's actually probably easier to count the ones that he hasn't. And this man is none other than Joe Miles. Joe, how are you doing today?
Buddy, I am doing great, Jacob. I hope you are. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's been a while since you and I have been together. I think the last time we were ripping up a Planet Fitness and they almost hit the bonk alarm to get us run out of there when we were doing the curl sets in there. But I think that's the last time you and I have been together, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think the people at Planet Fitness were ready for an Arm Farm Friday.
No, I don't.
A Splendor Miles Arm Farm Friday. We were doing sets till failure and then waiting 5 minutes and doing 10 more sets till failure. So it was a good workout at a rather
really good workout. Yeah.
Sketchy location. But yeah, no, that's actually one of the points, and I like to introduce my guests on like some level of criteria of their experience in hunting, and then just like why I would have you on, because there's not going to be a person that I ever have on this podcast that I don't like as a person as well. And I guess that is a great testament to who you are, Joe. And the reason that I want to pair with ASIO Gear and used ASIO Gear before we partnered together, and it's because I love Rendell. I love you, Joe. You guys are great dudes, and you're the exact same off the mic, off the cam that you are on it. And you stand by your products. They're high quality. Your warranty speaks for itself. And I couldn't say enough good things about you. We could probably have a podcast on it, but that'd be a little more boring than the awesome stories we have to tell. So if you guys want to get to know Joe or Rendell, Joe is going to try to make the Kalamazoo show, you said, this year, the Mobile Hunter Expo.
Yep, that's my plan, is to get up to that one.
So this episode's probably debuting after that, but there will be plenty of shows, I'm sure, that you'll be around in the future too after this, and then Rendell as well. But you guys will come to find that beyond just being hardworking killers that love the outdoors and love spreading a quality product to a lot of different hunters, they're very good dudes that live by the words they speak as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Jacob.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, I think we should dive right into it. Joe, you've hunted, like we said, more than 15 countries. You were given an estimate of 15, maybe 17 countries. And you've killed a lot of different big game species. You've been in a lot of sketchy situations. And you're the kind of guest that was honestly borderline the inspiration for a podcast like this. Is there's so many guys that have incredible hunting wisdom that could tell you how to hunt all these different species and all these different situations and have the success to prove it. And a lot of the times, all you're ever on a podcast for is to hear about those tactics or a specific hunt or something like that. And those stories of while you are gaining that expertise, a lot of crazy crap happens, especially when you're dealing with other countries or public lands or anything like that. And those stories kind of go to the wayside just to hear about the moment of the kill. And I love those wild, crazy things that happen in between. And I was like, you know what? I should hit up Joe, see if he has something. And you were just like, yeah, I have probably endless stories. And you hit on 3 bullet points. And those 3, I was like, all right. We can only, we might have to dedicate an entire section of this series to you at this point. But we've got 3 stories that are really going to wow the listeners here. And the first one I want you to touch on, we were talking about what happened in Mozambique with some poachers. Yeah. So if you could kind of go on a little bit of a breakdown on this hunt and leading into it, and then everything that went on that led to this wild occurrence.
Yep. So this was my second year as a fully licensed professional hunter. When I got out of school, that was, well, really backdating that a little bit. When I was 12, 13 years old, I saw some Peter Hathaway capstick safari videos. My dad bought them for me. They were on VHS. So I'm dating myself quite a bit. But there was a guy on those videos named Jeff Rand that was an American citizen that was a professional hunter in Africa. And I thought, man, one day I would absolutely love to do that. That was kind of my dream. And as I got out of school and was young, I got to capitalize on that, went over to Africa and did a long apprenticeship because I wasn't able to stay for the full season. I could go for a couple months at a time, then I would have to come home. So a normal 2-3 year apprenticeship took me 7 years really to where the guy I was apprenticing under, or the guys I was apprenticing under, felt comfortable that I could start leading some safaris and dangerous game safaris on my own. I'd completed my professional hunter's course in South Africa and then started my apprenticeship. And it wasn't up until after year 7 that the guy I was working with, Jamie Wilson in Mozambique, said, okay, you're good to go. Let's start you off with leopard and Cape buffalo, and then we can grow you into elephant and lion. There's no rhino in Mozambique that you can hunt. But so that was kind of the plan. So first year I did some leopard safaris, some Cape buffalo safaris. That went very well. Second year, my roommate from college, his father and son-in-law wanted to come over and do a combo. The dad was going to do leopard and the son-in-law was going to do Cape buffalo. And we're hunting on the Rovuma River. And if anybody wants to look that up, it's the kind of border between Mozambique, northern Mozambique, and southern Tanzania. And Mozambique in the 90s had a terrible civil war, and population was pretty dwindled, but especially in the northern part of Mozambique. but the population in the southern part of Tanzania is fairly populated. So you get poachers that come over the river. The river's not super deep, but you get poachers that come over out of Tanzania into northern Mozambique. There's a reserve up there called the Nyasa Reserve, and they set these snare lines around this reserve, and they're poaching meat. That's what they're doing. You get some ivory poaching in that area as well, but most of it is meat poaching. And they take them, set the snares, come back over, get the meat out, and then they go back into Tanzania and they sell the meat. The problem with it is that the guys will come in, and it may be 5 or 6 in a poaching party, and they'll come in and they'll set 35, 40 snares. Well, when they come out to catch them, if they have 3 of them that are tripped, let's say they have a zebra, an impala, and a kudu, whatever it is. Well, man, that's a bunch of meat. That's all that, 4 or 5 guys can carry. And the other, however many snares they set, they just abandon them. So what happens is, you'll get young elephant, you'll get lion, you'll get Cape buffalo, you'll get other animals that get caught in these snares, and they rot or they break them off, they get infected, and that's when they become really dangerous. You get a Cape buffalo with a snare, and boy, he will just charge you out of nowhere for no reason, or not no reason. It's because he's hooked up to that snare. But I'm getting a little bit off tangent. So anyway,
that's valuable. That's actually really cool to learn that.
It's different. And a lot of guys, and I could go down this rabbit hole for a while. They don't understand the hunting in Africa is actually saving game. When Jamie, the guy I did my apprenticeship, or my boss over there, Jamie Wilson from Zambia, when he went into Mozambique and started these buffer zones around the Nyasa Reserve, there's very, very little wildlife in them. And because of the poaching, and he got anti-poaching patrols in there, got a lot of the snares up, and within 3 short years, the game was making a huge comeback to where it was sustainable hunting numbers again, from basically 0 to huntable game. And so it really was a betterment to the animal, not a detriment, that he set up these hunting areas in northern Mozambique. So anyway,
there's a lot of stuff I've looked up just to touch on that too. So it's not like, the person that's doing the hunting is the only one advocating for it. I've never gone on a hunt like this, but I've done a lot of research because I have a lot of friends that do hunt like this. And I did this research before I even knew you, Joe. But there are a lot of different places where 100% of the conservation funding is from hunts like this. And, a lot of the food for the villagers is from the game that you shoot there. A lot of their protection is you're taking out game that could be potentially dangerous to the locals. There's often sometimes when you see an endangered species being hunted, I know that often it's an infertile, aggressive male that's killing more of its species than it's actually producing. And there's a lot of layers to this that a lot of people don't actually look into. And if you care to do the research, it takes about 10 minutes to find out that the reason this is a practice for years and years, that's actually saving a lot more game, saving a lot more locals, funding the local populace a lot more than it's harming anything.
Yeah, it is. And the problem is you throw emotion in it. The guys that are advocating for the hunting, and this isn't a kumbaya podcast that we're having here, but
right.
But the guys that are advocating for the hunting, they have statistics and they have data and they have facts. And then the other side of the equation is raw hatred and emotion. And it's hard to have a civilized conversation when it's that polarizing, of opinions. But I've seen it firsthand with areas that had very little wildlife that hunting organizations come into, and the wildlife explodes. I've seen the opposite. They close hunting in Kenya, and if you want to do, like you said, if you want to do some research on Kenya and the elephant population, what the elephant populations were when they closed hunting in Kenya, and what the elephant populations are now in Kenya, you will be staggered at how bad it ended up for the elephant.
Yeah.
But so back to the story of the poachers. So the guy's name's John Dobson out of Spartanburg that I'm hunting with, and his father-in-law is John Floyd, and Big John is doing the leopard hunt with the guy I did my apprenticeship under. They're doing leopard, sable, and Cape buffalo, and I'm doing Plains game in Buffalo with John, the younger guy. He's my age. We were in our 20s, so that was quite a while ago. But anyway, I've got just to set the stage. Basically, what you do is we would drive out of camp in the morning, and we would drive down the Rovuma River, and I've got 2 trackers on the back of my truck, and John and I'm driving the Land Cruiser. It's an open air Land Cruiser, like an open air Jeep. Trackers on the back. I'm in the driver's side, and John obviously is in the passenger side. Guns on the rack in the back, and we drive down the river. And what happens at night, the buffalo will come to the river to drink, and then they'll turn around and head back into the bush. And, we've got miles and miles and miles of river frontage. And then if we don't pick anything up there, then we go kind of what I'll call inland or into the bush to different water holes to see if we can pick up different tracks, because they water in that area at night. And so we're driving along down this riverbed looking for buffalo tracks. And sure enough, we stop, and they're fresh tracks. So I get off with my trackers. John's kind of hanging out at the front of the truck. We're talking about, whether we want to pick these up and go after them, how fresh they are. And all of a sudden I hear a bullet, and it's just the fraying of the bullet. It's the crack of the bullet. And then I hear the gun go off. Ooh. And I look at my head tracker, and they abandon me. They run, scatter like a covey of quail. They are gone. So I'm standing there and I don't know where this bullet has come from. I have 0 combat experience. And I've got a paying customer there who's looking at me like, what do I do? I've got a 500 double rifle. That's the rifle that I'm carrying at the time. And he had a 375 magazine rifle that, we could stack bullets in. He had a 378 as well for Plains game. And I didn't know what to do. So I'm like, is this an accident? What's going on here? And I didn't a bit more get that thought out of my head. And here comes another one.
Oh my!
So there's 2 rounds. And so the first thing I did was get him under the Land Cruiser. I got John. I said, John, get under the Land Cruiser. Here's my 500 double. Give me that 378. And the second shot, I could tell it came from the river, and I fired back that way. Just up in the air that way. I said, maybe it scares them off. Maybe it lets them know there are people here. I don't know, but I shot back up in the air, put another round in, and here comes another one from them. I'm like, okay, this is for real. There's some shit going on here. So of course I get on the ground, and about that time, my head tracker, Joaquin, he belly crawls back over to me. He did the right thing. He got away from the vehicle, which is, I've gotten quite a bit of training since then with some really, really souped up dudes. And he had gotten away from the vehicle, which I should have done. I should have abandoned the vehicle with the weapons, sorted everything out, and then made a plan. So he came back over, and he's pointing at the river, and I'm like, yep, shots are definitely coming from the river. So I told John, I said, okay, here's the deal. If anybody comes around the front of the Land Cruiser and they're armed and it's not us, you shoot them, because that's what we're instructed. If they're threatening you and it's poachers and they have weapons, you shoot them.
Yeah.
And so we start belly crawling to the river, and we get to the river, and here comes another one. But I think it's really to scare us away. So I fire back in the river this time, put another round in, and we crawl all the way to the river, and there's like a half log that's right there, and I kind of climb up on that log, and I look in the river, and there's like 4 dudes in the river with bicycles, because like I said, the river's really low. And they had bicycles in the river, and on the sides of the bicycle were like game bags. They weren't game bags. They were like feed sacks full of meat. They were full of meat. And these guys are all hunkered down in the river. And I guess they kind of figured out, well, I'll get to what happened. But I lay up on the river, on the log, and start going over all the guys with my rifle. I mean, I'm prepared to shoot whoever's got this gun that's shooting at us. And I'm looking up and down the line of guys, and nobody has a weapon. I'm like, okay, they dumped it in the river. I don't know what happened here. I'm just going to watch them. And so I'm looking at them. Well, then I hear voices calling to them from the Tanzania side of the river. So I switch my scope up. I go to the bank of the river, and I'm looking. I can't see anybody. Well, these guys slowly get up, and they start making their way to the Tanzania side. Well, I start yelling at them, but I don't know if there's 5 guys with AKs or what is going on Tanzania side. So and it's just me. So I'm young and I'm inexperienced, and I don't really know what to do, but I start yelling at them, and it just makes them go faster, and they get up and they get into Tanzania, and I'm like, what, I don't know what I should have done, but anyway, I get on, we've got a satellite phone, and I call back to base camp, and I tell them what's going on, and they put me on standby. They called back probably 10 minutes later, and they had radioed to the Nyasa Reserve, which is a national park or reserve, if you will, and they've got an anti-poaching team. And they said, they're flying into our runway, Joe. You go meet them there, and they'll take over. They said, you get out of there right now, take the client, go straight to the runways, these grass strips. Mm-hmm. And so we drove straight to the runway. Here comes these badass dudes. I mean, it's like Navy SEAL guys. They come rolling in. They've got their AK-47s and their AR-15s, and it's 2 planes full of them. And we load them up on our cruiser and take them back to the scene. And then that was the end of it for us. They were like, we got this. You guys go ahead. If you have any more trouble, you can radio us. You can settle, but we'll take it from here. We have jurisdiction to go into Tanzania. We're off and running. So off they go. And we go on, and John's like, dude, I don't really want to hunt the rest of the day. Let's go back to camp, chill. I want to talk to Big John. So we go back. So basically, I get a report from Jamie, the guy that owns the safari outfit, like 3 or 4 months later. What happened, this is a 2,500 square mile hunting block. That's how big it is. And right where we stopped on the river happened to be the exact spot these poachers were coming out of our hunting concession. I mean, it could not have the luck of that or the chances of that happening. And they thought we were anti-poaching, and they were about to all get busted. So they were shooting to try to get their people into Tanzania to get away. So it was just absolute terrible luck on our part, or call it good luck, because the anti-poaching guys go in there, and what they have are fishing villages that are quote unquote illegal up and down. It's frowned upon. Technically, it's illegal for them to have these fishing camps, but they let them do it because they have to be able to feed people, right? Mm-hmm. So they start torching, burning down these fishing camps, and saying, until y'all tell us who these people are or where they went, we're going to burn all of this down. And eventually they caught the people. Some guys escorted them to the village where they were held up. And apparently they had like a couple of AK-47s, a old, I think it was 458 lot or something like that, a bunch of meat, and a bunch of ivory. They had actually been poaching ivory in the area as well. So they ended up busting them. And it all worked out, but that was definitely, other than the run-in with the elephant. Well, maybe so. It was probably, again, I don't know that they were shooting to try to kill us. I think they were shooting to try to scare us off. But that was a hell of an experience, and one I definitely will never forget.
Yeah, that is crazy, man. I mean, so I've had shots go relatively close to me, like nothing like it was at me intentionally, but shots from gun drivers and stuff like that, like, go way too close for comfort. And I just never forget like the zing noise before a shot. You hear a shot crack, and that just like makes my skin crawl now if I like hear that, or like being downrange of a shot. Just, dude, that just freaks me out now, because like I've just heard so many stories where it goes wrong, let alone someone's shooting at you and you're 20-something years old in Africa. Like, that's just,
and you're not having any tactical training whatsoever. I mean, how many people are going to be in that situation? Not many, but it's something definitely to put on the list to get a little bit, a little bit of basic understanding of what to do in different situations.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a good thing you got trained after that too, because I probably would have done what you did. I would have been like, I'm not leaving my gun. Like, I would have maybe hit the deck, but at the same time, like if those guys were shooting a kill and I got lucky and they missed the first time, who's to say I don't get hit the second time?
Right.
Especially when you don't know where it's coming from. That is freaky, man. Holy
Yep,
cow.
it's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you alluded a little bit to our next story, but you talked about a charging elephant, and
Yeah.
you're saying that was in Tanzania.
That's
No.
right. That was the way. I mean, straight north. If guys are going to look this up on a map, they'll see the Nyassa Reserve in northern Mozambique, and then if you go right over the river, there's a corridor there, and it goes up to the Selous Game Reserve. And if you Google where the Selous Game Reserve, that's in southern Tanzania. So we were in between the Selous Game Reserve and the Ruvuma River in southern Tanzania, so very close to this area. And both those areas are very well known for big elephant. The ones in Mozambique are not exportable to the United States. The ones in Tanzania are exportable. So on this particular hunt, I had a client from Georgia, from Atlanta, Georgia. He had a construction business, and elephant was at the very tippy top of his list. And so that's why we picked this concession to go to. And I think, some of the listeners, we ought to do a little bit of understanding of why guys elephant hunt. A lot of people think, my gosh, why would you run into, they see National Geographic and it's just these elephants walking around in this, in the savannah, and you would just ride up to them and shoot them. Well, it's for a big bull, it's a big old mature bull that's been in what I'll call real Africa, like Africa that's not a nature preserve.
Nature preserve, not where they're going to feed them by hand and
right. It's a different animal, and they're very aggressive towards people. They don't like people. They've been poached. Elephants are very intelligent, but the issue is elephants get 6 sets of molars. Their teeth, right? 6 sets is what they get, and as they eat, those molars start to wear out. Like one will wear out, then here comes molar number 2. Then they'll wear, and they can last 8 to 10 years. So 6 sets of molars, if they're eating stuff that's not super sandy, in super sandy soil, then the molar can last longer. But let's just say, in this area, they should last 9 to 10 years. So you can have a 60-year-old bull that's on his last set of his last molar. And what happens when that thing wears out, the elephant dies by starvation. There's no real natural predator of a mature bull elephant other than man. And so what happens is that elephant, it starves to death and dies, and then the hyenas and stuff will come in and eat it. But that's a terrible way to go.
Oh yeah.
So what happens?
Or it just rots and then it gets eaten. It's like just,
But my gosh, I mean the poor thing can't, he can't digest food anymore. So when we're hunting elephant, we're looking for the size of the track, but also undigested dung, because they eat these leaves, and then a digested elephant dung is just it's solid dung, and I'm not going to get into that too much, but when you start following a giant set of tracks and you've got the dung there and there's undigested leaves and browse in the dung, that's an old elephant that's not able to digest all his food, and he's on that last set of molars. So we're doing him a favor here.
Yeah.
He's not gonna make it much longer, and the dollars that are being spent to hunt that thing, I mean, I think that probably the cheapest elephant hunt in Africa today is going to be pushing that $50,000 mark. Yeah. And depending on the size of the bull and the area, they can get up to $100,000. That guys are going to spend, and a ton of that money is going to go back into that anti-poaching. It's going to go into the habitat protection for the elephants. It's going to go into those hunting blocks. And so you're taking an old bull that's going to die of starvation. you're going to hunt him, and then it repeats itself with the finance so that one elephant can support and help the protection of hundreds of elephants. So that's really how it goes, and I think it's important for people that maybe don't understand that to get a grasp of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a huge part of it. When you take the economic relevance of that elephant out of the equation, meaning when you take the value of it and the hunters stop protecting them, then the ivory gets poached and the elephant goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of, I'm trying to recall this video I saw a long time ago. I think it was by Adam Ruins Everything. It's a guy who debunks a lot of like really common myths, but it was something along the lines of a hypocritical argument for trophy hunting or big game hunting or African hunting. It was something like that, but basically explains the structure and gives a lot of case studies for how it works. And particularly with elephants, I talked about like old bulls that are infertile or can't feed themselves in this case, either dying, becoming a waste, or becoming more aggressive and things like that. That's often what's targeted. But at the same time, with you funding the local conservation, the local conservation is the local populace. The local populace finds a way to make money through this. And now instead of the clash that we're seeing now with whitetails and other things where urban sprawl is moving in, kicking them out, you're seeing that a lot with rise in bear attacks and stuff like that out west, and cougars, scooping up dogs out of backyards because of urban sprawl and stuff. These locals are now incentivized to reserve space for the elephants and protect the elephants, and they're growing those populations. And I don't quote me on this because I don't know what areas this applies to. But in this case study, they actually said that locals were incentivized to shoot poachers on site and stop poaching. And it made huge impacts. Just from money going towards those hunts, it gave people a purpose to protect animals and made a lot of science actually occur in what animals need to be removed. That's really interesting too, with that whole undigested elephant dung too. I might be chasing a really old buck if I start to find little pieces of leaf too. I think I might look for that too.
Yeah, I think you should. Absolutely right.
Dude, if I find it, you are the first person I am going to credit.
Take a picture of
though.
it and send it to me and go, this guy's got to be an ancient warrior.
Right. But man, that is really cool. And the thing is, like, the way that media seems to work like nowadays is that the ugly and the non-norm is what's perpetuated because it's news. It's different. That's the reason it's news, because it's interesting. It's not the norm. And so like all you see are these grotesque cases of people poaching or doing ridiculous things, or you see whoever is out on a safari, and all you see is that picture at the end too. And I personally, I've done plenty of research on like why it's a good sustainable practice, but I haven't got to hear any of like the tactics or like the interesting different know-how that goes into hunting big game, especially in a different country. And it's really cool to, hear about the class you were taking and stuff like that, the way that you guys use tracking and stuff like that, and just the little tidbits. There's whole different layers to obviously hunting a different species, but I can't imagine all the different things that you guys have to focus on when you're battling poachers and dangerous game and stuff like that all simultaneously. That's extremely interesting to me.
Yeah, I will say that the professional hunters course and stuff was as, not to get off tangent too much, but it was one of the most challenging classes, compared to any college course or high school course.
Hey guys, Rick here from the Mobile Hunter Podcast, and I'm here to tell you about one of our sponsors, Sadie's LLC, Custom Ammunition and Gun Works. Aaron Satterfield and his family have been turning out some awesome game loads that have been putting down deer, waterfowl, and turkey all year long. The Sadie's Fatty, the turkey load that we use, can stop a bird dead in its tracks. Check them out at saddiesllc.com. That's SATTIES LLC.com, or on Facebook at Saddies LLC, and tell them the Mobile Hunter Podcast sent you.
Or high school course. It went from the different types of venom in snakes, whether it's cytotoxic, neurotoxic, or hemotoxic venom, to how to set a dining table, which one is the white wine glass, the red wine glass, where the silverware goes, how to fully cape out, a kudu skull, horn judging within 5% either way, and on a kudu 52 or 54 inches, is not tough. But when you get down to the small stuff like a diker,
Yeah.
their horns are only 3-4 inches long, that becomes a real challenge to make sure you've got one that's going to be record book quality. Tree identification, track identification, the law, different areas of the country have different laws. I mean, it just on and on and on and on.
And you were doing this before on X and all that stuff too.
Oh,
So like,
yeah,
this is all here.
Yeah, well, it was.
That's wild.
It's definitely perishable. It's perishable. I love Africa. I try to get over there every single year, and I've got a son that's 20 now, and my wife is hopefully going to come with me on her first trip over this coming year, and I'm hoping they can get more involved, because I would spend a lot more time over there. I just absolutely, it's a hunter's paradise, an adventurer's paradise. It's just endless opportunities to do different things and experience different parts of that country. It's incredible.
And that's the thing too. I feel like even if you go and you don't hunt anything or kill anything, there's something, and I try to explain this to people, there's something really special about the pursuit of an animal. Killing it and the very deep respect that you gain for how short life can be and how valuable of a commodity, everything in life is. Obviously, you gain that in the moment of the kill, but there is a lot of wonder and amazing things that you get to experience when nothing knows you're around. And that pursuit is something that brings you really close to who you are essentially on the inside. And so I feel like everyone has something that they could take away from the act of hunting. And maybe the final shot and whatever is not for you. And I respect that, but I feel like the size of the adventure is, I haven't been there, but I would say it's probably pretty unmatched when you head over to Africa.
It is,
I can't
man.
imagine a crazier, environment.
No, it is. It's so refreshing, and it's primal. I mean, your basic day is you wake up a little bit before daylight. There's a fire going. You go out to a fire because it gets during the hunting season, the winter, if you will, dry season. It gets cold at night to where you're wearing a beanie or a toboggan a lot in the mornings. July and August, it gets very, very cold, and you've got a fire going in the morning. There's no cell phone. Some of the camps now have Wi-Fi around the lodge area, but basically you get up, go to the fire, warm up, have coffee, have a little breakfast. You hunt all day long. It may be a sable, it may be a buffalo, it may be a leopard. You just don't know what you're going to get into, and then you have a bush lunch where they set up a table with linen tablecloth out there under an acacia tree or whatever it may be. You have lunch out in the field, take a siesta out there, and then hunt all afternoon, come back to camp, again, around the fire. And, you have dinner, mostly wild game, listen to the African night, the stars over there. You have a 50-gallon drum of water that's turned into a shower that you have a shower under. It's wow. A world-class experience. And man, to me, I love our life and how we live, but it just seems like I catch myself so much. You know how the cell phone tells you had 7 hours of cell phone time today.
Oh yeah,
or whatever it is, and I'm like, what a freaking waste of time. And then you're driving home in traffic, and it may be 30-45 minutes in one direction in traffic and whatever. I'm getting way off course here, but the point being, Africa is a hell of a place, and I would recommend it anybody that likes to hunt or likes any kind of adventure to get over there at least once.
Yeah, man, and this podcast is about, for the most part, we're not going to have someone on unless you get a crazy story, but like it's about the deer camp conversations that you would have. This is the culture that in the modern era that we're talking about, we're getting the opportunity to share this, through the internet and stuff, but there's a lot of disconnect and there's a lot of removal of that in-person, genuine interaction. And this is maybe finding a way to bring that back and have a campfire with a nice drink and some buddies, maybe in a way where I don't have to travel across the U.S. to go see you. And so, I mean, this is what I would want to talk about if we were right now sitting at a deer camp, or if we were sitting under the stars in Africa or something like that. Like this is what I think people, not necessarily, I mean, I'm sure this is exactly what they want to hear on top of it, but it's definitely something that needs to be spread out there, is that there's a lot of experience beyond, your back 40 that there is in the U.S., let alone the world. And it's cool to see the appreciation it gives you for all that we have as well. While it can be toxic at times to have all the screen time and things like that, to have an abrupt removal from that where you're not going to do anything to get it back for this period of time, I think that's a very healthy and awesome thing, and I'm sure it only adds to the experience.
It does. It also, I mean, some of the countries, and I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but some of the countries that I've been to, it makes you appreciate what we have here. It recenters you. Just looking at the different stores and the ability to get health care, the infrastructure. And then you come home and we're complaining because we got to wait at a red light for a minute and a half. I mean, it recenters you. So the adventure travel and going to these nooks and crannies in the world and different really rural places where hunting still exists, real hunting still exists. It's eye opening, I guess is a way to put it.
I love that, man. And yeah, I really like that. That's my favorite thing about hunting is just the perspective it gives me for the rest of my life. Like to me, it's an endless pursuit in becoming better as a human being, and it's a good vehicle for me to challenge myself. But I'm sure that we'll talk about this in the future too as well, and we could for a long time here too. But I totally interrupted you because we were talking about those elephant the conservation behind elephant hunting. But wherever we were with that story, go ahead and take it.
So anyway, the guy's name was Chip out of Atlanta, Georgia. Had a construction company, and he came over to do a 21-day elephant safari. And Big Bull was top of his list, obviously. But we were going to hunt some other stuff as well. And safari's going great. Everything's going good. We shot a big Cape buffalo. He's knocking animals down left and right. Things are going really, really good. We're just not getting into the elephant. We get to about day 14. Certainly not pressing. As you very well know, things can happen the last 30 minutes of a hunt. They do with whitetail all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But big expensive hunt, and starting to think about it. Hey, we're 3/4 of the way done here. We gotta get this thing. We got to get this thing wrapped up. And we go out one morning, and sure enough, we're 10 miles from camp, and his wife was with him, and she actually wanted to stay in camp this day. The roads were pretty rough in this area. She'd been beat up pretty bad. So she stayed in camp. So it was me, Chip. I had a driver and 2 trackers. And in Tanzania, we hunted a little bit different. In Tanzania, we would be actually up on top of the Land Cruiser, and then you would have a driver, and then the 2 trackers would be sitting up on the spare tires in the back, so you could see above the grass. And I actually prefer that style better than actually driving the vehicle myself, because then my whole focus can be on finding animals and assessing the situation. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we're driving down the road. Sure enough, big big elephant tracks in the road. Stop the car, get off, look at them, and we're like, yeah, this is a big-footed bull, one that we definitely want to track and follow up. But the tracks are right down the road, so I'm like, we're just going to keep following the tracks. They're not super fresh. We're just going to keep following the tracks until they leave the road. There's no reason not to keep driving. It'll save us quite a bit of time. So for like a mile and a half, this bull is in the road, and we're catching up. And sure enough, I look over, and it's kind of hilly in this area, and I look over a hill, and probably a quarter of a mile, maybe not a quarter of a mile, Yeah, probably a quarter of a mile. I could see the hump of this bull. It's a 16,000-pound animal. I could see the hump of an elephant. Stood up on the bars and on the back tire, and I'm looking through binoculars, and finally he lifts his head up, and I can see it's a bull, and we figure it's got to be him. So we get off the cruiser, get on the tracks, and sure enough, the tracks start heading that way. And we'll back up just a little bit. The most ethical shot on an elephant is the brain shot. It kills them instantly, and they have a temporal gland on the side, and they have an ear hole, and the brain is right in between the two on the side brain shot. And then the frontal brain shot, they have something. If you look at an elephant straight on, they have like this indentation on the outside of their head, and it's called the zygomatic arch. That's what it's called. And no matter where his head is, that brain is right between that zygomatic arch. And so the rule of thumb is you find that arch on the sides of his head, come to the middle, and touch it off, and you'll hit the brain every single time. So Chip and I have been over this about 50 times. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jacob.
No, I'm looking up a picture of this for my own reference. I'm actually,
arch,
the way you're explaining it, that's exactly how I pictured it. There's a bunch of let's see if I can share a screen here so our viewers can see just what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not pulling their leg. I'm telling them the truth.
No. It's cool to visualize this at the same time. So would you say that that's accurate? I don't know if you can see my screen right now.
Yeah. Okay. So you see, the zygomatic arch. See it right here, out past his eye. Past his eye. Go down a little bit with your cursor. Right there. See, that's the zygomatic arch right there.
Oh,
that's the wide part. Yep, right there, and right on the other side.
So then you meet in the center here?
Yep, that's right. And so just like the diagram shows, most guys shoot them high. But if you follow that zygomatic arch out there on the sides, that widest point on the sides, no matter where his head is, that brain's always going to be in the middle.
Wow. That is interesting. That is cool. That sounds like, that's a nerve-wracking shot for me, man. Staring down the barrel of an elephant. Staring down the barrel of your gun.
So that's what happens. That's what happens here. Chip has never been around an elephant. Now we've seen some cows and some younger bulls, and we've kind of messed around with him a little bit to get him familiar with where to shoot, and he's comfortable with everything. And so we get in on this bull, and we get to about 100 yards from him, and we want to get closer. We got the wind perfect. He's feeding, has no idea we're there. As we get into that 50-yard range, my trackers start getting kind of nervous and start hanging back, which I was a little bit surprised, but they grew up in that area. The elephants are very aggressive, and so they're kind of hanging back a little bit. So we get into about 30 yards from this bull, and he's feeding. He's using his trunk, and he's pulling limbs off this tree, and he's set up perfect for a side brain shot. And I set the shooting sticks up. Chip gets on the shooting sticks, and I mean it's right there. It's 30 yards. He's got he's got a scope, and this is a 16,000-pound animal, pretty big target. He's on the sticks, and he's not shooting. It's not shooting. It's not shooting. And this is like a minute. And of course, I don't want to rush him or put pressure on him or anything like that. And I'm finally like, Chip, you got him? He's like, yeah, I'm just not comfortable yet. I'm just not comfortable yet. And I'm like, okay, all right, all good. So he's sitting there, and I'm looking at this thing going, most guys would have shot 15 times by now. But it's okay, no pressure. Well, all of a sudden, the kiss of death, I feel the wind on the back of my neck. And the bull throws his trunk up in the air, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And there's like a kind of there's like a hump in front of us with a ridge that wraps around to him. It's kind of like a horseshoe with a dip in the middle. And he's standing on the other side of that horseshoe ridge, if you will. And ridge is an overstatement, but it's just like a little depression with a higher area right there. Well, the bull turns, and instead of coming straight at us, he starts coming along that little ridge. And he's coming along that ridge, and all of a sudden he's straight on. And now he's 25 yards walking towards us. And I said, Chip, frontal brain shot, shoot him now. Chip, frontal brain shot, shoot him now. Now this bull's 15 yards and got his ears out. So he
Oh.
sees us now. And Chip's on the sticks. And I said, Chip, shoot him now. And right when I got now out, he shot. And the bull hit the ground. You know, he was shooting a 375 H&H, and the bull hit the ground. Normally that's a great sign.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you don't hit the brain, all there is gray matter up there. And the bullet just zipped through gray matter. There's going to be zero blood trail or very little blood trail. And the guy's going to have to pay for the elephant because he shot him. And you've got a wounded elephant out there that's had a 375 solid go through his skull plate. So, and you're not going to recover him. I mean, he's going to recover. The elephant is going to recover from that. So you'd have to hopefully be able to track him down and get another shot in him. So we're taught as PHs, when that happens, as soon as the bull stands up, to put a round right behind the shoulder in the lungs. And then as he's running away, you shoot him in the hip, break a hip bone, knocks him down, and then you can go finish him off. Mm-hmm. So when the bull hit the ground, I thought he brained him. I was like, yeah, you got him. Well, I hadn't a bit more got that thought out of my head, and the bull stands up, and he's staggered. And so I've got a 500 double, and I shoot him behind the shoulder, and 90% of the time when the bull gets hit like that, he runs like crazy. Well, this bull didn't do that. I shot him behind the shoulder, and he turned flat out. He let out a big bellow, and he turned flat out with his ears open and came straight at us as hard as he could go. And I had one barrel left, and I went outside to that zygomatic arch, and I never will forget it. I pull back in, and I'm aiming basically straight up in the air. It's inside 10 yards. And I just touched my back trigger off, and it hit him right there in the brain. His head rocked up in the air. His butt hit the ground, and he collapsed right there in front of us. And it was so much weight, so close, that I know this sounds like an exaggeration, but you could feel the earth move when his head finally hit the ground.
Oh, I believe it.
And I've got pictures of it, and you can see the Chip shot and my shot. The blood is running down his head this way, and then it's got my brain shot, and the blood is running that way. So it's where he actually fell. Away. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So where gravity took over on those shots. But that was in my 20s too, and that was quite an event.
That is freaking. Oh God, I don't even want to imagine that.
It was nuts. It was nuts.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not an understatement at all to say the ground shook too when that elephant falls too. Because I mean, I work in a bronze and steel foundry, and parts that are 5,000 pounds. I've been present when 5,000 pounds falls off of a fork truck, and it'll do a lot of damage to concrete, and it'll rattle the railings nearby. Like that 5,000 pounds is a lot to hit. So I can't imagine something that's 15,000 plus maybe.
It was something. God. That was wild. And I was still a bit of a rookie then. And that was my maybe second solo elephant safari that I guided. So it was early in my career. It was wild. It was absolutely wild. And they're so big, man. Once you shoot an elephant, another thing we didn't touch on was the whole village comes out and we butcher that thing. And it's protein and meat for everybody. But as we're butchering it, they have like a big water bladder inside of them, and we cut that open, and there's so much water came out of that elephant, it like eroded like you would cut on a fire extinguisher. So much water that poured out of him, kind of down that little valley I was talking about.
Right.
It eroded. I mean, it just, you can't fathom how big they are until like their heart is the size of my desk that, that I'm sitting here. It's nuts.
I saw I think it was a bull, but I saw a really young bull like mount in Cabela's one time. And I just remember thinking of how big that was. And then this was back when they were installing the exhibit, and the guy that was installing it's like, yeah, this is a really small one. I'm like, what? I'm like, that thing's gigantic. And like, you're looking at like a full scale like African lion next to it, and it looks like it could just crush it like a toothpick. And like, Dude, those are some terrifying creatures, man. The way that they can lift with their trunk too and just extinguish you without any effort whatsoever. I mean, I'm scared of a
If they
bison,
grab you,
let alone that.
if they grab you with that trunk, it's game over. It's game over.
So, like, what's going through your mind when, I mean, probably nothing, but like when you're making that shot, when all of a sudden that elephant gets up, probably really hard to recall, but did you just get like a rush of adrenaline, or are you I saw that you were talking about the zygomatic arch and stuff like that. Are you going back to your practice, or what was your thought process there?
It happened so fast. The fear of death, really, of the elephant killing me. I was like always in the back of my mind. I was like, I can still run if I have to. That's kind of what I was thinking. But that was super naive, because he would have caught me, or he'd have caught my client. He'd have caught me or caught my client. I couldn't have gotten reloaded, but I really didn't think about the danger aspect until the deed was done, until it was over. And then I was like, holy crap, that could have been really, really bad for me or Chip or either one of the trackers. I mean, that could have gotten real bad. If the gun had misfired, or I'd missed the arch, if I had not brained him. I'm shooting a 500 double, and it would have definitely knocked him down, and maybe that would have given us enough time to reload, or maybe Chip starts shooting again. Maybe he dumps a few rounds in him. But you could miss or
any level of thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and the thing is too. I was talking to my friend about stuff like this, and he's going through some hard times, and basically talking to him about how any 1/4 of a second long decision can completely restructure your life and everyone around you's life. And it's not that in the moments beforehand that you like are really thinking about the gravity of this decision, but like once it's made, it's so permanent and like you can't erase that. You can't ever go back on it. And I think that when I look back at like to the couple near-death experiences I've had, it's always after the fact that you realize how everything that you everything you've ever known could have been gone, like instantly. And you think about, for me, the kicker is thinking about like how my mom would deal with me not being around, or knowing that I died, and she, often this happens in the outdoors, believe it or not, but how panicked she would be. And so like that's the thing that brings me down to earth, is thinking about how the people around me could have been influenced by it. But man, like it's just wild to think, like how many times have you, when you have all these experiences and stuff like that, how many times does a shot go awry for some reason, whether it's between you or a client in a normal situation, let alone one where you have a giant elephant charging at you, and you could do any level of overthinking on that angle too, and you could say, oh well, I got to shoot him lower, shoot him higher because of this angle that he's coming at, and there's any little thought there. And I'm not talking to Joe Miles today anymore.
Right. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, because I'm not outrunning him. He's going to grab
me.
Right.
You're in good shape, but I got the elephant in that one,
Joe. Not that good. Shape. No, and he's already smells us. He already sees us. So it was open. There wasn't a bunch of thickets to get in. And, it worked out great, but it was definitely a near-death experience. No question about it.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Well, that's an awesome story, but I hope to never experience that myself.
I don't want to experience that one again either.
Yeah, that's a good one to tell one time in your life. Wow. Man. So there's probably not much of a way to top that, but we have another one in the barrel here. Luckily, we got a third barrel this time. You talked about essentially a hunt from hell, and this particular one was for ibex. I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, I don't remember the year, but it was when there was a lot of U.S. tensions in the Middle East. Maybe
you could pick a year. You could pick many years.
Yeah, but I want to say 14, 15, maybe 16, somewhere around there. And I'll just start at the beginning. So I was going to the country of Turkey. And the place we were going to fly into, and if guys want to look on maps, we fly into Istanbul, and then we flew east of there to the town of Tunceli. And then we went east, even east of that, which is closing in on the Syria border. So we're getting close to Syria. And we're hunting in the Mansour Mountains, and guys can look that up too to see right where we were. Those are some hell of some mountains. I mean, they're every bit as bad as the Rockies. It is super, super rough. But, it kind of started, we flew into Istanbul, got our weapons cleared, or I got my rifle cleared, and just the looks we were getting, first of all, we're hunters. Second of all, we're Americans. It's a big Muslim country. We had 2 or 3 days in Istanbul because we were waiting on an interpreter, and we were staying at an intercontinental hotel. And, when you would pull up to the hotel, they'd have those big retracting concrete, like cylinders. So you'd pull up, they send a security team out. They'd put those mirrors underneath your car, kind of search your car. And then if everything checked out, they'd lower those concrete cylinders and you could drive into the hotel. So a little bit nerve wracking there. We did some touring of the city while we were there. We went to the Blue Mosque. They had the Muslim prayer. You'd hear that every morning, at daylight and at dark, or however many times a day they do it. So just a little bit unnerving, and the looks we were getting uncomfortable. But then as we got further out of the city, it got worse and worse and worse. The more east we went, the more rural we went. And it was a combination of being American and I think more so being hunters. I don't know, and I probably need to do more research, but the area we ended up, I feel like the ibex is maybe sacred to that area and the particular Islamic sect or Muslim sect that they're in, because it started out the first day that we hunted. We were right. It was probably the coldest I've ever been. I was there in mid to early December. Winds were probably blowing 40, 45 miles an hour down these canyons, and it was bitter cold. So we did a lot of riding on these roads. There was a lot of snow, and midday they were like, let's go to what they call tea rooms. It's where they serve hot tea and maybe a little bit of lunch. We've got a game scout that's got a pistol and that has to accompany the hunter in this area. He works for the national park. We've got our guide. We've got an interpreter. I had a cameraman with me, and then me. We go into this tea room and we're sitting down, and again we're being looked at from head to toe. Just looked up and down, and the guys are.
And you don't have your ASIO gear on at this point too, so they're not just checking out your camo.
No, that's right. I had a Deadly Competitors camo pattern on at the time. It's where I got some ideas. But their voices are starting to raise, and I obviously don't speak any of their language. Hence the reason we had the interpreter, and the interpreter told me and the cameraman he was like, let's go to the car. And I was like, why are we going to the car? He goes, it's just not, it's a little unsettled in here. Well, our game scout or game guard, whatever you want to call him, he starts barking back at these people, and it's like giving them a bunch of shit back to them. And I'm like, okay, this is getting a little bit heated. Well, this guy walks over to our table and just slams his hand down and in English says, "No tea, get out." And we're like, what is going on? Well, then some guys start holding people back. They're trying to get over there to us. And the game scout unclips his pistol belt. And I'm like, yeah, this is about to get bad. So Kevin was the cameraman. I'm like, Kevin, we do need to go to the car. So we got out and we went and got in the car, and they ended up getting it all sorted out. And the interpreter came out, and he said, the problem is that you guys are hunting ibex, and these guys are like big time anti-hunters, and you're American. So it was just a bad bad situation. And I'm thinking, well, why would you bring us here? I'm like, why on earth would we come to a place that would put us at this risk? Well, things like that just kind of continued on the trip. We went to this one area where it was a hot water springs, and they had one little like hotel in the middle of nowhere, but they had a bunch of ibex around there. And I don't know if it was because of the hot water or why, but there was a bunch of ibex around there. And that guy came out and he actually tried to fight me. He like came up and started pushing, and I was like, okay, well, here we go. I don't have the Jacob wrestling background that I need, but I can handle myself okay. And I'm like, all right. So I put my pack down, my rifle down, and the guy ended up sorting it out and calming the guy down, and he was furious. And again, Americans and hunting, and they didn't like the fact that you were hunting. So this is kind of not constantly going on, but every time we get with the general population, it's an issue. And so I told the guy, we're going from where we're staying to the mountains and back, and we'll pack our food. We're not going to any more houses. We're not going to any more restaurants. A to Z, that's it. So
you don't need much tea.
No. That's right. Long as I got my Snickers, I'm in good shape.
Right.
So we start getting up into the mountains, and like I said, we were getting close to the Syria border, and there are a bunch of forts. They have these little pop-up forts that look abandoned, but they're not. We'd be 500-600 yards away from like this just little tiny fort that's got razor wire and fencing around it and some huts in there and some machine gun like nest built. And you'd be like, there's nobody in there, that's abandoned. And you'd be looking, all of a sudden you'd see a cigarette. If it was early in the morning, you'd see the cigarette glow, and there'd be some dude up in that
guard tower.
Yeah, in that guard tower. Yeah, there you go, guard tower. And you're like, good, in the middle of freaking nowhere. And there were these little forts. And so I'm like, this is nuts, man. I'm ready to get my butt out of here. So long story short, ended up killing a really nice ibex. And we get him out of there. Well, the guides want to celebrate. So they're like, okay, on the way back, we're going to stop by this little restaurant place. We'll get them to fry up some fish for us. We want to show you a good hospitality. So we go in, eat the fish. Everything's all right. They're like, okay, we're going to pay the bill. You guys go into the car. When we get to the car, well, here comes a marching regiment of the military out of one of these forts. And when I tell you they surround our vehicle, I mean, we got there's guys jumping in ditches, setting up what looks like 60 caliber belt-fed machine guns totally around our vehicle. I'm with an interpreter, me and Kevin, and I'm like, Kevin, film this because this might be our last. This might be it. And the interpreter's like, no filming, do not film. And we don't know. Are they calling us out? What do they want here? What have we done wrong? Well, Jim, or Sim Jill is the guy's name. He's our head guide. He comes out and sees the lead, sergeant or whatever he is, walks over to him, and they start talking. He wants to see paperwork. He shows him all the paperwork. Well, they had heard there was poaching in the area, Americans poaching in the area, and they had sent the military out to find us. And they weren't going to kill us, but they were sure going to arrest us, and haul us in, and knew that we had weapons. So, a wrong move could have gotten out of hand. And so I'm like, all right, get me back to the airport. I'm done with this country. I'm not coming back. And I am going back. I'm going back this December to do it again.
Gosh.
To a different area. But get back to the airport, and I'm like, okay, finally, we're at the Tunceli airport, flying back to Istanbul, overnight in Istanbul, flying home the next day. So get on the airplane, fly in to Istanbul. I'm getting up to get my overhead bag, my backpack, out of the overhead compartment. This guy walks up behind me and forearm shoves me down into my seat and steps over my legs and goes off the plane.
What?
Now I've had it. I'm like, that I've had it. So I get off the plane, and he's standing up by like a plate glass window on his phone, texting somebody. And I see him, and I walk up, and I hit him with my forearm as hard as I can hit him, knock his phone out of his hand into that plate glass window, and he gets red-faced. And there's a couple big – Kevin's a pretty good – he's like you. He was a jiu-jitsu guy, wrestler. He's in pretty good shape. I had another hunter buddy of mine that was hunting a different area. I won't mention his name on here, but he's a big dude too. And, the guy kind of looked at us. He was startled. And the first thing he said was in broken Turkish is, "You're not in America anymore. We'll be outside waiting on you." And I was like, oh, boy, yeah, that was smart. That's the smartest thing that I've done in my lifetime. So we go get our luggage, and making a long story too long, they were not outside waiting on us. We got in our van, our pickup transportation, went to the hotel, came back to the airport the next day, and flew on home. But the point being, that was really a trip from hell, and it was a combination of anti-hunting and, guys not liking Americans. So that was a pretty rough one.
That's wild, man. I mean, we talk a lot about discrimination in America, but particularly in Asia and other stuff, I've had a lot of friends with firsthand accounts of some absolutely horrible discrimination. And then also it happens on a governmental level there too, where it's not just what people may claim. It's blatant, we might kill you kind of things. And that, that's terrifying. And the thing is, I'm thinking about this as you're talking about the people surrounding you. You're saying, they weren't going to kill us. So it's like, you don't know how they're going to interpret you having a gun on your person. It might be a stretch, but it's also not the furthest stretch that there's been when it comes to situations like that, And
no, it would have been justifiable on their point, right? These are people that have a firearm. An illegal firearm is what we've been told, and there's the firearm, and we can see it in the vehicle. And we took them out because I don't think they would have, but certainly they could have probably been justified to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're not answering to the same people that you would answer to in the U.S. for killing someone as a military official, and it's a sketchy situation through and through. I will say, I wrestled in college and whatnot, and I've practiced jiu-jitsu and stuff, but the more that you get into fights, the more you realize that as much physical skill and bravado that you have, no one really beats a gun, and you don't know when a gun's going to happen, and you don't know what guy you're dealing with. So, or a knife, which is much easier to conceal. So I would say an airport's a fairly safe bet. I mean, there's probably not a lot of people with a gun or a knife in an airport, but I would advise anyone that if a random guy hits you, that's one of those moves of hitting him back that you can't take back if he does decide to meet you outside.
One of the dumbest things I've ever done. But I was at a boiling point, and it had happened over and over and over, and I'm finally, dang it, I'm a man, and I'm tired of this.
Yeah, and you're putting up with so much of it too.
Yeah, I let my adrenaline get the better of me, and obviously, if I go back in time, I'd just walk by the guy. And what it was is he didn't want to wait on me to get my bag out of there was no social etiquette. I don't know that he obviously he knew I was an American, or he wouldn't have done it. But or he wouldn't have said that to me on the jet at the top of the jet bridge. But regardless, I shouldn't have done that. It could have ended up really bad. Who knows who that guy is, or who he was connected to, or the country of Turkey, they operate totally different. Anyway, I made it back, and I am going back over there. Those ibex are awesome creatures. I'm going to a totally different area, and I want to give it another chance.
That's cool. Well, I mean, if you do need the muscle out in the mountains, we can work somehow to have me or some college buddies coming out with you. But no, man, that's about as dense of a podcast I've had yet with really, really entertaining stories. And I mean, Joe, I can't thank you enough for being on and talking about these. I'm sure you've got countless other ones. But
no, man, we could tell some more. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed always talking with you, and anytime you want to do another podcast, be more than happy to hop on again.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure at some point here we'll either share a camp or see each other at a show too, and we can actually do the in-person version of this. And I think that'll be a lot of fun too. I'm stockpiling episodes right now to debut kind of late August, early September, so that I can be actually hunting during a lot of the hunting season versus doing what I'm doing right now, which is a lot of recording and editing. But I look forward to all those different camps that I get to have during the hunting season, and just happen to hit record when we're telling all these crazy stories. I wanted you to have the opportunity to talk about all the different things that you're doing with ASIO Gear and all the media that you're putting out right now. If you could you please share that with a lot of the people that are interested as well here?
Yeah, absolutely. So ASIOgear.com, that's obviously our website and our Instagram handles and all that. So the guys can follow along there. Mine is Joe Miles Hunting. That's my Instagram handle. And man, yeah, we're ASIO is, it went from an idea that I had to really growing every single year. Guys in the whitetail space are getting the gear. They're starting to use it. We're seeing the organic growth. Guys are getting it and seeing how effective it is, the quality of the stuff. And we're excited about where it's heading. We're adding 5 to 7 new items every year. We've got some new items coming this year. We've got a whitetail puffy jacket. It's got 80 or 90 grams of Primaloft gold insulation, but it's really, really quiet. It's reversible. It's black on the inside. So guys that are hunting out of ground blinds, they can turn it inside out. And that's our first, quote unquote, black piece other than a vest that we have that actually will be a functional hunting piece. It's a great layering piece. We've got a late season hybrid hoodie. It's going to be a full zip hoodie, but it's going to be 100% windproof, really thick bonded fleece. So it's going to be a really nice outer layer. If you wore that puffy jacket and put that late season hoodie over the top of it, it would be, that's going to be about all you would need down into the low teens.
Yeah.
So those are 2 good pieces. We've got a build beanie coming, a merino wool build beanie. We've got a 3D leafy jacket. We've had a ton of requests for those. So the leaves are actually in our ASIO Raptor, and we made it specifically for bow hunters. So we took some of the 3D leaf pieces out of the forearm and arm area, so you won't get any string interference when you're shooting or drawing your bow. So we've got that coming. Let's see, that's 3, 4. I think that's all 5, isn't it? The puffy jacket, the leafy jacket, the build beanie, the late season hoodie. There's one more that I'm forgetting, but they'll all be on the website. We're completely redoing our website. There's a new website. It'll launch probably around the 15th of July. That's when we'll have our pre-sale on all the new products, as well as any out of stock items. And then we've got a new brand manager. He just started with us about 2 weeks ago, and he is super switched on. So we've got a ton of good content coming, and very, very excited about the season and where it's headed.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, I've hunted. I killed several bucks in your stuff this last year, and I've hunted and or ice fished in ASIO gear anywhere from -10 to 110 degrees, and it's worked fantastic for me in all those situations. After this season, we've decided to work together on promoting ASIO gear and maybe cross promoting and stuff like that. And I gotta say that it's a no brainer for me considering the people that represent the gear itself. And if you guys do want ASIO gear, I get to flex this little discount code, I guess. But use the code Jacob20 and you guys will get a 20% discount on any of ASIO gear. I will say that another thing that makes me love to stand behind you is the lifetime guarantee that you have. I've seen firsthand some really generous things out of you from people that have had their gear burned up in a fire or destroyed for any reason. And it's just very clear that this is a company founded by hunters that advocate for other hunters and just want people to be out in the woods, excelling at the game the best they can in gear that will make them comfortable and able to do it at the highest level.
Man, I appreciate that. And yeah, that warranty kind of for us was a no-brainer. This stuff's expensive. it's expensive to build real good quality, windproof, insulated. That PrimaLoft Gold is probably the best insulation that money can buy. And there's a difference in PrimaLoft. They've got a black, a silver, and a gold, and gold is the best weight to warmth ratio. And that stuff's expensive. So guys, if they're spending $1,000, $1,500 up to $2,500 on a whole new setup of gear, we stand behind it because we know that's expensive and we know that's hard-earned money. And if things happen, you're climbing over a barbed wire fence, you rip your $350 bibs. You're like, yeah, man, we'll take care of it, because we know that you're putting your hard-earned money into that. So we'll fix it or replace it. So it's just something that we're going to continue doing at ASIO, is offering that lifetime guarantee.
Yeah, and I encourage anyone to look at, I know your new website will have it too, but your current website has videos of you breaking down each article of clothing, each accessory, bag. I got to say, a lot of people don't know that you have backpacks, and your backpacks have been great for me this past season. But when I talk to you, you advocate a lot about the quality of the garments, and they're extremely high quality, and that's what a lot of people don't realize at first, because they're drawn in by that really nice camel pattern, and they can see the application, from a great horned owl to being in a tree stand or being against a tree turkey hunting or something like that. That's kind of what gets people to go take a look at it. But seriously, this gear, I cannot say enough that how high quality this stuff is, and to then slap a lifetime guarantee on it is just, it's a no-brainer for me. And I will say, if you guys want to see a quick review of ASIO Gear and a few different pieces of clothing, you can go on the Mobile Hunter YouTube page. I recently put out a video for that. And in that video, there's actually footage of a turkey at 30 yards watching me move in ASIO Gear. Now, this is a tom on public land, a 3-year-old tom, watching me move, putting his fan down and getting spooked for a second, and then going right back to strutting when I stop moving. And I've never had deer really even do that to the point where they stop being sketched out in any clothing, let alone a turkey at 30 yards. So this stuff really does work. The camo pattern is the real freaking deal, and you guys are only going to think more highly of it when you consider the warranty and all the different features of the clothing itself.
Well, I appreciate that. And likewise, if any of your listeners, has questions or anything like that, feel free. I'm not afraid. My email is joe@asiogear.com. Shoot an email directly to me, and I'm up early and stay up late at night. So I'll get back to any email I get or any questions about anything, holler and we'll get them answered.
That's awesome, Joe. Well, I can't thank you enough for being on here. I know that we'll talk again soon, but man, just hope you have a great night. Really appreciate everything you've done for me and everything you've now done for this podcast as well.
Oh, man, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. Very humbling to be included here. And, yeah, man, anything I can do, let me know.
Cool. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's podcast. The best way you can support the podcast is by sharing online and with your buddies at Deer Camp. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram and leave us a 5-star review.